thousands of protesters lined the streets throughout various cities in America, I watched from my TV screen and wondered if Hawaii has lost its famous aloha spirit. Hawaii has famously been acknowledged for their welcoming residents who are tolerant of all. With the current racial tensions, I wanted to put the assumption that the people in Hawaii live in racial harmony to the test. Now, imagine this. You're 12 years old and you're riding your bike down your neighborhood. You're probably thinking about what's for dinner or when mom will call you in. This thought is quickly interrupted by the police who hold you up to gunpoint. Unsure of what's happening, the officers throw you into the car and you're driven to jail. You later learn that you weren't in trouble for anything, rather, you fit the profile of another male who was wanted. To most, this seems unimaginable, but for the African American boy living in Indiana, that was his reality. Growing up in Hawaii, I was always outside in the yard or playing in my neighborhood. The thought of being held at gunpoint as a child was not one that had ever crossed my mind. I've never been racially profiled. I've never been discriminated against. No one ever used racial slurs. I've never had a negative interaction with someone who was different from me, so I grew up with the assumption that everyone lived happily together in racial harmony, and bad racial interactions were only seen on TV, which was so far away. I began to educate myself on these topics, researching studies that had already been done and reading up on articles. I used the existing studies to help me create questions for my own survey that I would send out to people of various ages. One article that stood out to me was a New York Times article titled, "Is Hawaii's Racial Harmony a Myth?" because it provides multiple perspectives of people who both agree and disagree. I designed an anonymous survey with lots of trial and error that asked about the respondents' upbringing, if they had changed their values since, situations involving race and how they felt, and basic information like age and ethnicity. I received 90 respondents from both men and women, ranging from ages 15 to 84. After I sent the survey, I started to wonder about trends that would soon emerge. From personal experience, I had gone in with another assumption that the older respondents would be less tolerant of differences and uncomfortable in some of the hypothetical situations. I know that this is because of the times that they had endured, where some felt as if they were treated similarly to African Americans during their early adult life. As a result, I thought that there would be a lot of responses from that generation's kids describing their upbringing as negative because of how their parents viewed those who were different from them. A couple of days later, I closed the survey. As expected, a large majority of respondents were tolerant of African Americans and had a positive upbringing. One respondent had said that, "My parents did not discriminate against anyone out loud, but neither did they seem totally accepting of different ethnic groups other than Asian." When asked if their views had changed from their parents, this respondent replied, "I did share similar views growing up. However, after living on the mainland and working with people of different ethnic backgrounds than those in Hawaii, I came to realize that I needed to expand my views. I realized that some people may be suffering from a limited perspective." In this respondent's case, there was a lack of exposure growing up to those of different races and ethnicities, as the respondent later realized that she needed to expand her views on those different from her. According to the U.S. Census, Asians are the most prominent race in Hawaii, with 37.6% of the population being Asian. It's easy to say that you've never had a bad interaction with someone different than you when you are the majority. I was also surprised with the positive responses from the older age demographic. All were raised with the ideas that everyone is equal under the eyes of God, respect others' differences, and that they are all the same, regardless of looks. Hawaii has proven to be a place filled with racially tolerant people. My assumption that all people in Hawaii live in racial harmony is half true and half false. Despite the various racial backgrounds of the respondents on the survey, Asian people are a big majority in both the survey and in the population. Because of that privilege, these respondents lack the perspective of the 12-year-old African American boy held at gunpoint. Being exposed to threatening situations can alter one's perspective of an entire group, and because of the lack of negative exposure to other races in Hawaii, as the residents are already naturally diverse, Hawaii residents are privileged and can say that because of the lack of negative interactions with those different from them, they are tolerant and live in a false sense of racial harmony.